Most people believe confidence is about smiling wider, speaking louder, or standing taller. That's a lie. True confidence, the kind that bends kingdoms and rewrites empires, has nothing to do with posture tricks or pep talks. It's built on a single, ruthless trait: strategic detachment. The ability to move like a general on the battlefield, unshaken by noise, unmoved by opinion, untouchable by fear. While others scramble for approval, the truly confident operate like Machiavelli's prince, calculating, deliberate, immune to the petty storms of the crowd. Their presence is not loud. It is silent, heavy, unignorable. Their strength is not in being liked, it is in being untouchable. Let me confess, I wasn't born with this. I used to think confidence meant flooding the room with words, forcing myself to appear bold, faking it until I broke down in private. I remember one night in college, standing before a debate panel, heart pounding, palms sweating. I spoke with energy, but inside, I was begging for their approval. When the applause faded, so did I. That's when I realized confidence built on validation is as fragile as glass. One stone shatters it. History teaches this truth mercilessly. Julius Caesar didn't conquer Gaul because he was outgoing. Napoleon didn't crown himself emperor because he had positive self-talk. Churchill didn't hold Britain together in 1940 because he believed in affirmations. They all understood the same law. Confidence is not about what you project. It's about what you can endure without crumbling. Here is the paradox. The man who clings to praise is weak. The man who fears being misunderstood is shackled. The man who builds his strength on others' perception will collapse the moment the tide turns. Machiavelli wrote in The Prince that it is better to be feared than loved if you cannot be both. What he meant was this: reliance on external approval makes you vulnerable, but reliance on your own strategy makes you invincible. Think about it. How many years have you wasted waiting for validation? How many times have you diluted your voice to fit the room? And what did it give you? Temporary applause, hollow nods, nothing that lasts. Now contrast that with Alexander the Great. At 18, he commanded armies older than him. Did every soldier love him? Many hated him, but they followed. Why? Because his confidence came from vision, not from their approval. His detachment from their opinion made him magnetic, unstoppable, immortal in history. So here's the forbidden truth. True confidence doesn't roar. It doesn't dance for attention. It stands like a fortress. It intimidates because it cannot be shaken. And once you build it, you will see how ordinary the world's version of confidence really is. Cheap tricks, shallow applause, counterfeit power. But let me ask you, are you willing to strip away the lies you've been fed? Are you ready to abandon the comfort of fake it till you make it? Or will you remain, like most performing confidence, while secretly enslaved to opinion? Because as we speak, someone else is sharpening their strategy, building their fortress of detachment. They will enter the same room as you, and without raising their voice, they will own it. The clock is ticking, time is running out. If you don't claim this power, someone else will claim it over you. In the next section, I'll strip myself bare. I'll show you the personal scars that taught me this truth the hard way. Not from books, not from theory, from blood in the arena of life. And only then will you see why Machiavelli's law is the only path to unbreakable confidence. So, I'll leave you with this question. Are you the type of person who needs to be seen as confident? Or the type who becomes so strategically unshakable that the world has no choice but to recognize it? Confidence built on sand collapses with the first wave. I learned that not in a book, but in the battlefield of my own life. Let me take you back. There was a time when my entire identity depended on being seen as the confident one. I was the loud speaker in class, the extrovert at parties, the one who could fake charm on command. Everyone said, "You're so confident," and I believed them until the day the mask cracked. I still remember it vividly. I was 22, standing in a corporate boardroom during an internship. My manager threw me a question I didn't have the answer to. Silence fell. My carefully rehearsed charisma evaporated. My voice trembled. My palms sweated. In that moment, the illusion of my confidence collapsed. I realized it was never mine. It belonged to the approval of others. And when that approval vanished, I was left naked, exposed, powerless. That night, I sat alone in my apartment. No music, no distractions. Just me and the echo of my failure. I realized something painful. I had built my self-image like a palace of mirrors, shiny, dazzling, but fragile. One stone shattered it. That wasn't the first time. In relationships, too, I had fallen into the same trap. I once dated someone who fed on my need for validation. She would withhold affection just to test me. And every time, I bent, I begged, I adapted. I thought flexibility was confidence. It wasn't. It was weakness disguised as loyalty. When she finally left, I was broken not because she was gone, but because I had no center of gravity. My entire confidence was outsourced. It was then that I started reading The Prince again, not as a historical curiosity, but as a manual. Machiavelli's words cut me like a blade. He who becomes master of a city accustomed to freedom and does not destroy it may expect to be destroyed by it. I realized I had allowed others' opinions to remain free within my mind. I hadn't destroyed their hold on me, and so they destroyed me. That was the turning point. I started observing history differently. Caesar crossing the Rubicon was not just an act of military genius. It was an act of detachment. He severed his dependence on the Senate's approval. Napoleon, at Austerlitz, didn't win because of charm. He won because he was willing to sacrifice perception for strategy, retreat for positioning, silence for victory. Slowly, I began testing this in my own life. At work, I stopped scrambling to fill silences. I let them hang. I noticed how others squirmed, desperate to fill the void. At first, it was unbearable. My body screamed, "Say something, prove yourself." But the more I resisted, the more I realized the silence was power. Confidence wasn't about speaking more, it was about needing to speak less. Socially, I started practicing detachment. If someone ignored my message, I didn't chase. If someone mocked me, I didn't defend. At first, people thought I was aloof. Some even called me arrogant. But slowly, the energy shifted. They leaned in more. They craved my attention because it was no longer freely available. Scarcity created value. This is the paradox no one tells you. The less you need people to see you as confident, the more they believe you are. Detachment creates gravity. Neediness repels. The transformation wasn't instant. I stumbled, relapsed into old habits, felt the sting of rejection. But each failure was another battle scar, another lesson in fortification. I began to see confidence not as a mask, but as a fortress. Not built overnight, but brick by brick. And this is where my path intersects with yours. Because maybe you, too, have built your palace of mirrors. Maybe you've been told you're confident, but you secretly know it's hollow. Or maybe you've never even tried, because the fear of rejection has kept you small. Either way, the truth is the same. Until you master strategic detachment, your confidence will always belong to others, not you. So, let me ask you directly, how much of your confidence right now depends on someone else's approval? If tomorrow everyone stopped clapping, would you still stand tall, or would you crumble? The greatest lie of modern self-help is that confidence is about believing in yourself. Nonsense. Julius Caesar didn't believe in himself, he believed in power. Napoleon didn't chant affirmations, he studied maps until his enemies bled. Winston Churchill didn't stand before Parliament in 1940 because of self-esteem, he stood because he had a strategy for survival. Here is the truth Machiavelli understood. Confidence is not an emotion, it is a weapon. And like any weapon, it must be sharpened, wielded, and directed with ruthless intent. The Machiavellian Foundation. Niccolo Machiavelli, in The Prince, 1513, dismantled the illusions of human nature. He saw men not as noble, but as selfish, fickle, and easily swayed. His advice to rulers was clear: build your strength not on their love, but on your ability to act without dependence. For love is conditional, but fear is consistent. Machiavelli wrote, "Men sooner forget the death of their father than the loss of their patrimony." Translation: people are loyal to their own interests, not yours. So a ruler who ties his confidence to their affection will collapse the moment those interests shift. True confidence, then, is the ability to stand when others turn, the ability to act even when applause vanishes, the ability to detach from the approval of the crowd and anchor yourself in strategy. Caesar. Crossing the Rubicon, 49 BC. Julius Caesar stands at the banks of the Rubicon River. The Senate has ordered him to disband his army. To obey is to surrender power. To cross is to commit treason and ignite civil war. Most men would hesitate, calculating their reputation, fearing the opinion of Rome. But Caesar utters 3 words: alea iacta est, the die is cast. He crosses. Rome erupts in chaos. Yet history remembers him as the man who ended the Republic and birthed an empire. Caesar's confidence was not in being liked. It was in his strategy, his army, his vision. He detached from the Senate's approval and became immortal. Napoleon, the master of silence. At the Battle of Austerlitz in 1805, Napoleon deliberately allowed his enemies, the combined armies of Austria and Russia, to believe he was weak. He let them advance. He lured them into a trap. When the sun rose and the mist cleared, Napoleon unleashed his reserves and annihilated them. That is Machiavellian confidence, the willingness to appear vulnerable, to be underestimated, to risk temporary humiliation in service of ultimate victory. The man obsessed with maintaining an image would never risk such a strategy. But Napoleon understood: detachment from appearance creates dominance in reality. Sun Tzu, The Philosophy of War. Centuries earlier, Sun Tzu in The Art of War declared, "Appear weak when you are strong, and strong when you are weak." This was not about deception alone, it was about detachment. The general who craves recognition exposes himself. The general who acts with indifference to how he is perceived creates unpredictability, and unpredictability breeds fear. Confidence, in the Machiavellian sense, is not about self-belief. It is about self-control. It is the ability to endure misunderstanding, criticism, even ridicule, because you are tethered not to their opinion, but to your plan. The brutal lesson of history. Look closely, and you'll see the same story repeat. Caesar detached from Rome's approval and forged empire. Napoleon detached from appearances and crushed coalitions. Churchill detached from the fear of being wrong and defied Hitler when others begged for peace. And the reverse is true. Leaders who built confidence on perception fell. Louis XVI, obsessed with court image, lost his head to the guillotine. Nicholas II of Russia, desperate to be seen as strong, ignored reality and watched his dynasty crumble. The law is merciless. Confidence built on others will always be destroyed by others. Confidence is not magic. It's not a gift of genetics or a secret charm in your bloodline. Confidence is an engineered state, a system that biology, psychology, and history all converge on. And the most powerful lever in that system is detachment. Let's dismantle the myths and show you the evidence. The psychology of detachment. Modern psychology has a name for what Machiavelli described: self-determination theory. It states that humans thrive when their sense of worth comes from within, not from external approval. Studies show that people who base their identity on autonomy and mastery report higher resilience, lower anxiety, and stronger long-term confidence than those chasing validation. Why? Because external validation is inconsistent. Praise today, criticism tomorrow. The crowd is fickle. The moment you outsource your confidence, you tie it to a roller coaster you don't control. Here's the brutal reality. The more you need approval, the more you signal weakness. And predators, whether in business, relationships, or politics, can smell that weakness. They exploit it. They manipulate it. They own you. But when you detach, you flip the script. You become unpredictable. And unpredictability creates power. The biology of confidence. Confidence is not just mental, it's chemical. Studies from Harvard and Stanford have shown that when a person feels in control, their body increases testosterone and decreases cortisol. That means more dominance, less stress. The reverse is also true. When you seek approval, cortisol spikes, testosterone drops, and your very biology makes you appear weaker. Think about that. Your body betrays you when you're desperate for approval. Your voice tightens, your shoulders cave, your eyes dart. People don't just hear your words, they sense your chemicals, and they judge you accordingly. But when you practice detachment, when you stop needing approval, your biology recalibrates. Your breathing slows, your gaze steadies, your presence expands, and others feel it before you even speak. The social evidence. Look around you. Who commands respect in your circles? Is it the person who tries hardest to please? Or the one who seems unbothered, unhurried, detached? Always the latter. Scarcity breeds value. The man who withholds his need for validation becomes valuable precisely because he does not chase. This is why high-value people, whether leaders, entrepreneurs, or generals, often appear calm under pressure. It's not because they feel no fear. It's because they've trained themselves to detach from others' judgments and anchor to strategy. My own test. I tested this in the simplest of arenas, social interactions. I once walked into a networking event determined not to sell myself, not to seek approval, no forced smiles, no nervous self-promotion. I simply observed, spoke when necessary, and allowed silences to linger. At first, people overlooked me. Then something shifted. The very fact that I wasn't trying pulled them in. By the end of the night, I had deeper conversations and stronger connections than I'd ever had when I was performing. Why? Because detachment creates gravity. Historical proof. Churchill in 1940. The 4th of June, 1940. Britain faces annihilation. France has fallen. The Luftwaffe prepares to strike. Parliament is begging Churchill to negotiate with Hitler. The sensible path was compromise. The people wanted reassurance, softness, comfort, but Churchill detached from their fear. He stood before Parliament and thundered, "We shall fight on the beaches. We shall fight on the landing grounds. We shall fight in the fields, and in the streets. We shall never surrender." He didn't say what people wanted to hear. He said what they needed to hear. That detachment from popularity gave him the gravity to carry a nation through its darkest hour. And history remembers him not as a people pleaser, but as an unshakable rock in the storm. The core formula. Here is the evidence distilled into a formula. Detach from external validation. Biological shift. Lower cortisol. Higher testosterone. Biological shift. Psychological stability. Calm under pressure. Psychological stability. Social authority. Others sense unshakable presence. This is not philosophy alone. It is proven, observed, repeatable. So, here's my challenge to you. Where in your life can you run this test today? One conversation? One meeting?